I forgot to bring these out as well, but after the talk, if you're interested in keeping in contact or contacting me, this is his postcard. It's got a picture. That's Facebook, Instagram, website, and email, and there's also some stickers if you like as well. So unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, all the Z's are gone. So hope you guys all enjoy those. Feel free to contact me to tell them how much you loved it later. And yeah, so we're going to welcome Nathan Davis. He is a local graffiti artist. He's been in the scene for like 30 years, inspired by the early generation of hip hop. So he's going to talk, and you guys feel free to kind of jump in and ask questions whenever you want. So we'll kind of, have a sort of dialogue going here. And yeah, I'll let Nate take it away.
So, first off, I'm terrified of public speaking. It's brutal for me to deal with right now. Doing graffiti is fun because you're putting your stuff out there, but at the same time, no one knows who you are, so you have anonymity, not to just be safe from being arrested, but just express yourself and then just back away. And then people walk by and they have no idea it's you. So speaking in front of you guys is an honor, but it's also my worst fear. No problem. Bear with me a little bit. So most people know me by my nickname Nazo. I've had that for 24 years or so now. I got into graffiti back in the mid-80s, maybe around 84, 85. There's a movie that came out called Beat Street. It's like a Hollywood drama, hip-hop movie. It's not a documentary or anything like you were watching earlier, but it had breakers and DJs, MCs, and graffiti artists. And I was about 9 or 10 when I saw that, so I was like 84, 85. And when that movie came out and I saw it, I was like, I want to do that. I saw all the graffiti and I didn't know anything about it, but I saw it, I liked it, and I was like, that's going to be me one day. I want to, especially with the subways, like, wow, I want to do that. So I was already drawing already as a kid. When I was really, really young, I'll just give you a little bit of backstory of what got me into art in the first place. And then pretty much I want to spend the rest of the time just if you guys have questions, anything I can help you with, just let me know. When I was a young kid, my dad was addicted and an alcoholic and really abusive, so my mom left him when I was born. So when she took me to live with my grandparents while she was working, my grandparents raised me. When I was sitting at the table with them growing up, my grandma would be playing cards or whatever with my grandpa. They'd always have pens and paper to keep score and stuff. So they would always pass me a pen and paper, and I would just doodle, probably 2 or 3 years old, just doing lines and stuff. And then we didn't have preschool back then, so when I was probably around 3 or 4 to prep me for kindergarten, my grandma started getting to teach me how to print and write, first printing and then writing. And she had really nice handwriting. And from that moment on, I didn't know graffiti at all back then. I was 3 or 4, right? So, but I just liked the way the letters looked. I liked the way you could play around and make lettering look. And I got pretty good at that. And then, just pretty much kept on printing and writing, doodling, being a regular kid. And had no contact with my dad, so we stayed away from that. But I didn't realize until I was older that artwork and doodling and pretty much burying myself in the paper and pen was keeping me from dealing with a lot of bad stuff going on. So then when I saw the movie and I saw the graffiti, I was like, I want to break dance and I want to do graffiti. And I can't rap and I'm not going to DJ, so I'm just going to like that. But this is going to be me. And we don't have subways, so what am I going to do? I'm going to figure out how to take this to the street. So we didn't have the internet back then either, so the only way you'd see graffiti is if you actually saw it on the street. There's no way you could just look it up. There was a couple books in my elementary school that I ended up seeing a few years later, one called Subway Art, one called Spray Can Art, and they covered pretty much a lot of what was being shown earlier, like the early scenes of graffiti. And then I just started getting into drawing. Around the same time I saw Beat Street, I got into skateboarding. So I started copying the graphics off the skate decks and started copying comics that I was into. And just spent most of my time just kind of doodling, just being in my paperwork. And then in 1986, in my neighborhood, I grew up on the Lower Mainland, and in my neighborhood, I saw my first graffiti mural. I went to this corner store every day. One day I went, nothing. Next day I walked in, the whole side of the corner store was completely covered, as high up as you could, the whole wall. Totally illegal, but it was I can't remember what it was exactly, but there was characters, highlights, whatever, whoever did it, their name, like, it was beautiful. So I was like, whoa, this is real life. I saw that in a movie and I thought it was cool, but now I'm seeing it in real life. I can go up and touch it. Someone actually did this. Someone I know in my neighborhood did this, and I was like, oh, I want to do this. I want to find out who this is, and I want this to be like, I want to be this guy. But I was only like 10 or 11 at that point. I had no idea about spray paint, anything about what to do to get to that, but I just wanted to draw it, so I just kept drawing it. And then years go by in school, we had one teacher from grade 8 to 10. Our teacher was, she supported graffiti, but she didn't support the illegal aspect, but this was around 88, 89, and it was still really new, but she supported the fact that we were all like 13, 14, and we're trying to create something. She was like, well, you know, I don't like if you're going to do this outside, which I was already tagging with little markers and stuff, thinking I was like this cool little kid. 11, 12, running around the street with a Sharpie marker, skateboarding. But she was like, look, like, I don't know anything about that, but I've got all these, I got sketchbooks, papers, felts, like, let's do this. And she would put out like an assignment, like, here, we're going to draw realism, we're going to draw an apple. And we're like, I don't want to do that, forget that. So we'd spend the rest of the class doing our own thing, and then eventually she was seeing what we were doing and realizing, okay, we're not interested in that, but we still have creativity coming out. So she started talking to the principal, like, hey, like half my class is into graffiti, maybe we can do something with this. And everyone hated graffiti back then, but our principal was like, well, we've got this one wall. So in our school, in between two classes and two hallways, we had a little courtyard that we didn't really have access to students, but the teachers could. So that one wall, which I don't know, was maybe like the size of this desk, a little bit bigger and pretty tall. The principal said, how about we do this one wall? We'll allow this. This was around 1989 maybe. And so we had a contest in class. Everyone submitted ideas. The art teacher, the principal, vice principals all looked at it and picked their favorite one. And I didn't win. I really wanted to paint, but I didn't get it. My friend got to paint, but he got to paint the first graffiti piece legal wall that pretty much anyone in our school had seen, any teachers had seen at that point. That was actually real life, not on a movie. And after that, we were like, oh, this is really cool. We should do that. And we're walking around the city, and there's nowhere we could do that without getting arrested. So that's the only reason why we started kind of going out and doing the illegal part of it. So what we did, instead of didn't want to get caught being on the street doing it, so we would find train tracks. And I grew up by a train yard, so I was already walking the train tracks before there was graffiti anywhere anyway. So I was kind of familiar with the tracks. And we would just walk down tracks and find spots under bridges where like basically junkies were sleeping. And find half cans that were left behind from not even graffiti writers, but like punk kids or like, I mean, we're about 14, 15 then, so they're probably like 17, 18. This dude's drinking and stuff and had a can and would tag like Slayer or whatever. And we'd find it, so we started trying to tag our names and act like we were cool and stuff. And then eventually, I can't speak for all graffiti writers, and I can't speak for what you saw in UVIC was giving my perspective, but mine wasn't more of street bombing and tagging business and stuff. I spent most of my time in the train yards and along the train tracks, hitting different bridges, stuff like that. And so like the homeless and the junkies and stuff that were living under those bridges never had a problem with us, because they're like, we live here and we have nothing here, so you guys can paint, like make something for us. This is my living room. So we just started doing that, and cops never came down, so we never had to worry about that. And then just as you get older, you know, you start weighing out, like Tacky was saying in that little write-up, you kind of start weighing out what are you willing to risk being arrested for. And I was pretty smart about it. Like, it's a good clip that she posted about traps. It's traps from the generation my mentor came from. I have two mentors. One came from New York and one from LA. So I had mentorship both in Bronx graffiti, 70s, 80s, subway graffiti. And I had mentorship from one of my homies in LA who brought up with gang graffiti, Cholo writing, and that history. So I was getting kind of the best of both worlds mentorship. But on the Lower Mainland at that time, there was like nothing. We didn't have anyone to mentor us. We were all new. So if you can imagine, like, you're finding something for pretty much the first time yourself. There's the odd little graffiti piece, the odd train would go by with something, but you have no idea what it was, where it came from, or anything. You were just discovering it all on your own. You couldn't go on Google or Instagram and just like, oh, where is this thing located? So you have to find it. So my side of the legality and illegal, like I'll answer any of your questions you have and stuff, but I can't speak for like, all writers. I can speak for mine. And then I was going to go into this big, originally before I came here, I had this whole speech planned out that I was trying to memorize, so it wouldn't be as awkward. And then when I sat in and listened, I thought, you know what, you guys have a lot of questions, a lot of good things to say, so I kind of want to use your time up to answer any questions you guys have. Like, I'm here to be a benefit to you guys, so when you guys want to learn, maybe I can help you out. I know you're not all like visual artists, might be music or theater or whatever, but maybe some of my experiences are useful with you guys, or I'll have an answer for one of you guys. Yeah.
Is your art primarily just graffiti art, or do you do other materials?
No, I do, where's this? So this is, I brought this as a sample of what I do now. My background's in graffiti, but over time, I took a huge break from graffiti, not because I was arrested or anything, it's because I was going through a lot of rough times. My dad ended up being murdered at one point, and I just kind of delved into graffiti really hard to kind of help me get through all these times. And then I hit a certain point where I was pretty suicidal, and what I did was I stopped all graffiti, I lost contact with all my friends, I pushed family, I pushed like everyone away because I was right at the verge of doing it. So I didn't end up, I tried to kill myself at one point, but something happened and it didn't work. And what I did was I went from graffiti to abstracts, not those particular ones you see up there, but I don't remember what brought me to it, but I went to an art store one day, and I just walked in and I just grabbed a canvas and some acrylic paints and some brushes. I never used them, I don't even remember why I did, but just like graffiti is what I grew up with, what I loved, and I just felt like almost like I didn't deserve to do it at that point or something, I just didn't feel it. So I started doing these abstracts and doing these pieces that were helping me deal with my dad's death and dealing with a lot of other issues. And then I started playing with abstracts, and then people were like, oh, those are kind of cool, you know, you should do these a little bit more. So I wasn't doing them to sell them, I wasn't doing them to be an artist, I was doing it to clear my head. Most of my art back then, now it's different, but back then it was mostly for therapy. Like, I didn't realize at the time, but art, sketchbooks, graffiti, trains, doing whatever I was doing, it was keeping me from dealing with a lot of crap going on in my life, so that was really therapeutic for me. So looking back, I see how having a creative outlet of any kind is, the problem is trying to channel when you're a graffiti writer, and like I teach kids and stuff, and it's trying to channel, okay, like, how can you take what's in your head and get it out on some level, because you'll feel better whether you're good or happy. It enhances good times and it helps you through rough times, but how can you get it out? So when I started painting these abstracts, I felt good painting them, so I kept painting them. And then I started getting into portrait work and realized that even after not really trying it, I tried a portrait and it turned out pretty good, so I kept into that. And then my trains, I moved here about 3 years ago with my husband Chris, and when I moved here from the mainland, there's no trains anywhere. It drives me nuts. So what I did was take all the times that I painted trains and missed trains so much, because I haven't painted a train in a long time. I started painting these models, so those are like little, they're called HO scales, so they're like, those trains are maybe a little bit longer than this, and about half this height, and they're painted with toothpicks dipped in ink. So I'm taking, because I'm not doing the illegal side of it anymore for the most part, it's like, I can't paint trains, there's no trains here, so what's my next best thing? So I got into doing those models. So now I'm taking what I wish I could do in real life on steel, but I can't, so now I'm doing it on little model work. So I'm primarily known now for my abstracts and my graffiti and graffiti model work. Portraits are kind of new, but getting into that too. Hope that kind of helps. Any other questions?
So how do you primarily make a living and like money as an artist?
Right now I do gallery work, I do commissions full time. I teach classes for different things. I teach like modeling, weathering classes, not just for graffiti, but like, so say one of these trains, you can go buy them for super cheap out of a discount bin. That's something that I'm teaching parents, that they can sit down with their kid for just a couple bucks and work on something. If you see like a kid's into graffiti, or you see a kid's artistic in some level, it's a cheap, fun little project you can kind of do. So I'm getting paid to teach people kind of how to channel their creativity that way. And I do commissions full time throughout the year, art shows,
So what does that mean, commissions?
So say you like one of these and you're like, can you do one for me? Can you get my girlfriend or my boyfriend? Or can you do one for my mom for a birthday? Or like, I've got friends getting married. Can you do a little like, ST plus JS or whatever? Can you do something like that for me? So I do that full time throughout the year. So I've got lists at home, unless I cut it off for an art show where I get really busy. I just got lists throughout the year of stuff I'm working on. So a couple bucks here, a couple bucks here, a couple bucks here. And then I have a part-time job as a backup that I only work a couple hours a week, just as kind of a backup, so it helps pay the mortgage. But over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, I've gone like into full-time artwork where like my side job is just a backup still, and I don't really consider it as a job. Like I just kind of do it while I'm there. I'm zoning out, thinking about what I'm going to work on when I get home, pretty much. Any other questions?
You talked about after you saw that movie that you wanted to get into breakdancing as well. Did you ever get into it?
I did for grade 4 and 5. It was pretty hardcore. We had Adidas blue tracksuits, a little beanie. We did head spins and stuff. And so my fear of public speaking comes from this kind of a question. So our teacher saw me and one of my friends when we were like 10 doing some pop and lock or whatever. And my teacher's like, oh, this is cool. So what we're going to do is get you to do an assembly in front of grade 1 to 7. And you guys are going to do this really dope routine. I'm like, I want to do that. I do this. So our teacher's like, do it. And my friend was like, yeah, let's do it, because he wanted to be cool. Like, he was already kind of the cool jock guy. And I was like the chubby kid. So he was like, I want to do this. Girls are going to love it. I was like, oh, man. So I got suckered into doing that. And that was terrifying. I mean, we did it, but from that point on, I was like, oh, I don't ever want to do something like this again, for the most part. So it lasted. I breakdanced for a couple of years, and then ended up, I was all right at it, just for fun. It wasn't for competition or anything. And then I ended up ripping a ligament in my knee, and from that point on, now I'm just the fat part guy. Like, well, if you're breaking or someone's DJing or whatever, I'll be sitting in there working on your album cover or something. Anybody else?
Is there a throw-up you're most proud of?
Sorry?
Is there a throw-up you're most proud of?
My own, probably.
Yeah, but any specifics?
Yeah, I don't know, they go in stages. If you're creative on any level, you're proud of what you do until you put it out of whatever it is, and then you look back on it a few days later or a week later, or you listen to the music you made, or you see a performance you did, and you're like, all I see are things I want to change. That's kind of like with me. Like, I even like my tattoos. I got one tattoo I designed in my name that I stuck to for a long time. I love it, but now I'm looking at it, I'm thinking of recent stuff I've done. I'm like, oh, that would look nice here too, though. Maybe I can get another spot for it. So, I'm proud of it up to a certain point, and then it changes, because just life changes, and you end up getting stoked on something. I think to hold on to your creative side, if you get to a point where you almost like tap out, then you're not going to learn anymore. You're going to lose all your passion for what you do. If you just think, oh, I'm the best, that's my best thing, I'm good at it, then you're just going to start settling, where I don't think anything I do is the best thing I do. I think that's good, I'm proud of it. The next one, like, even like something like those portraits or the trains, like, I'm super stoked on them, but give it a few more months, I'm going to look at it and be like, man, I can change so much on that, I can make it better, Anybody else?
I'm just like curious, like for a visual, you said the lower minimum, like where were the train tracks that you like, grew up around?
I grew up a lot of my time in Surrey. I spent a lot of time in Vancouver, Burnaby, Surrey. But I grew up in Surrey. There was a train yard just down the street, and my intro to train, well, my grandpa worked on trains before I was born. He retired from it, but I've always had people in my family that talked about trains and stuff. And then when I was probably like 9 or 10, one of my best friends at the time, we were probably grade 4 or 5, so Beat Street hadn't come out yet. I didn't know about graffiti and all that. But we were like little kids, and I was having my issues with my family, and he was having some rough times. So me and him would sneak out during, like, after school, I'd be at his house or he'd be at my house. And we would just go to the train yard, which was only a few blocks away. And we wouldn't be stupid and walk on the live lines, but we would try to walk along the side. We would just disappear for a few hours. And that was where we would just talk about, like, all the shit going on in our life, pretty much. And like, he was being bullied, I was being bullied. We both had dad issues and violence and stuff like alcoholism and stuff. So we just went and disappeared. But then, 10 or 15 years later, when I was getting really big into graffiti, I'd be back at those training at the same spot that I spent a lot of time in, looking at it totally differently. So that now I was seeing, like, I knew the ins and outs. I knew what was safe, because the last thing you want to do is, like, go and kill yourself. So I was like, never go in drunk or high or anything. I'd go in by myself a lot of times because I would just feel comfortable. I wanted to get out, in and out safe. So those yards in Surrey, I spent a lot of time just kind of hanging out in. And eventually, when I got into painting, I was like, oh, I wonder what happened if I paint this train. I wonder where it's going to go, because it disappears so fast. And that got me really big into the train culture.
You mentioned designing your own tattoo. Would you do tattoos for other people? Is that, no? Not work you would ever
Designed
do?
a few tattoos for people, but I leave that, like, I got a lot of friends that are tattoo artists, and being an artist doesn't mean you can translate your art to certain other genres of art. And my art, except for this one because it's super personal, it's my first tattoo, it's exactly mine, and one of my really long-time graffiti homies tattooed it on me, so he was okay doing exactly my work because we've known each other forever. The only time I've done another tattoo was a memorial tattoo for a friend of mine. I don't design for other people now. What I'll do is, if you like a certain style, I know tattoo artists, I would say, hey, this is my friend over here, go talk to them, check out their portfolio, because even though a lot of tattoo artists have a background in graffiti as well, they can see it differently because the ink translates differently than a sketch. So they're going to see, if I give them a sketch, they're basically going to change it all around anyway. So I don't do that anymore. It's really rare occasions that I love.
What's etiquette like? Like, do people get bummed on someone putting up a new tag over, like, I don't know, like a Juno 6 size? That Reaper with the skateboard? Like, I don't, no one ever tagged over that. It's sick. But I'm just wondering what is etiquette for graffiti?
I grew up with the foundation of hip-hop rules where there was certain rules. So, like, if you were older than me and better than me, I wouldn't touch your stuff unless I could. It's called burden. So if I could do better than what you had there, then it was okay. And then that way, even if we didn't know each other, you would respect my work, because you would see it. Instead of being mad that I went over you, you would be like, oh man, you did a good job. That's going to motivate me to do better than this kid. I don't know who this is. Nowadays with Instagram and just being online, everyone thinks they're famous and they're good because they get a couple likes online. So it's kind of blurring that line. When I grew up, so I didn't know you and I went over you, there's a good chance I would get stabbed. Like, no joke. Like, my neighborhood in Surrey we didn't play around like that. There was people knew there was rules. So if someone went over me and I was already established, I ever ran into them, kick the shit out of them, to be honest. Like, and I was also dealing with a lot of other stuff in my life, so I had anger issues and stuff too. But there was rules then. Nowadays, I mean, I'm in my 40s now. I'm like a lot of your parents' age, basically. So if someone goes over one of my pieces, at first I'd be like, this kind of sucks. But at the same time, I would just use that motivation. I'd be like, all right, okay, I'll go over you. I'm going to show you, and I would do a better piece. But where I'm established right now, I've been in it for so long, and I've gone about everything the right way for like 30 years. So people generally respect my work anyway, even though I don't paint illegally anymore, and I'm not doing a lot of the stuff I used to. I've still already been there, done that. And because I'm respectful to everybody, like, I treat a crackhead the same way I treat a businessman. Show me respect, I show you respect. So I've built that up with myself. That's just how I live my life. So I don't get bummed out. Other people will go and cry and whine about it and stuff, but that's just my experience with it. My generation and my friends, we handle it differently than the other days. I mean, I'm too old. I don't want to get fights with people anymore and stuff. It's not worth it for me. For me now, it would be like two kids slapping each other with paintbrushes. That's kind of how it feels like. To younger kids, they get all hurt about it and stuff. But nice. Anybody else?
If we still have time after the questions, can you do a freestyle on the board?
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Have you ever been sponsored by a paint company?
Paint companies don't really sponsor you unless you're on such a level that you're going to earn them money. So you'll see, you can go YouTube and YouTube certain paint companies, and they've got their people that paint using their paint all the time. I know a lot of the importers of certain brands and stuff, and I can get it for super cheap or wholesale just because I've known them since way, way back in the day. To get sponsored by a paint company, like, I'll use this for example, a few months ago, probably like 6 or 7 months ago, we did a jam at Hotel Z on Douglas Street. So we've got painted the permanent wall in their parking lot, and we had a temporary section set up that we had 2 kids from a sketch night I host. We had them paint there. So they got to paint with like their mentors and their mentors' mentors and stuff, and the hotel backed it, and we had sponsorship by one paint company. To get the sponsorship for that paint company, we got it through a local company called Wool Sheep Art House down in Trans Alley. So they buy the paint, they went to the paint company themselves and were like, hey, we got this going on. What kind of sponsorship can you give us? So they give like X amount of paint for a really, really big deal. And then to even use their logo on any ads, they have to go through like loops to get that happen because no paint company just wants to just put their brand on something. So the only way they're sponsoring writers now are basically, those writers are like the best of the best. They're doing insane things that show you spray paint can do crazy stuff. Plus, a lot of them are still doing a lot of trains, a lot of illegal stuff. So they're kind of blurring the line. But I haven't been sponsored by paint. I just get it really quick. Anybody else? No questions?
You say in your bio that you like graffiti helped you get through the bad times and it enhanced the good times. So like, was that reflected in the type of art that you were making? I mean, you said you went to abstract, but if you were feeling dark, like was your art dark?
My graffiti changed a lot when I hit points where I was really suicidal and like times where I was really trying to deal with my dad's murder. My graffiti then started changing. It was looking really sharp, really chaotic. Just a lot different than it is. It wasn't polished. I didn't care at that point. I was just. It's hard to explain, but if you've never spray painted, even if you're not into graffiti, but when you hold a can and you get to do something where you're putting your body into it, it's something about that just kind of helps. It helped me relax. I find like, painting with a brush, it's fun, but you're in a kind of a little controlled space and you're focusing on a little space. It's kind of fun when you're pissed off to like have a spot to just throw paint on a wall and do stuff and instantly cover it because you don't have to wait for it to dry and kind of play around it. It doesn't cost as much as kind of buying all these acrylic paints or oil paints and brushes and cleaners and stuff like that. So I find my art changed during my different moods I had. For a long time now, I've been in a good spot. So my art now is like typically like stuff like this. Like it's pretty polished. It's really, really colorful. That's kind of where my focus is. I try to not dwell too much on any of the bad stuff. Like it's happened, I can't change it. We've got past it. But what am I going to do now? I want to put stuff out that makes someone else feel happy. So if I do a piece, graffiti, portrait, whatever, I do something that touches you on a level where you want it and you buy it, and that is the kind of art I want to put out, not for the money, but for the factor of it. I do an abstract that made me feel good, that someone else out there sees and they want to buy it, put it in their wall because it makes them feel good. That's why I do art. I don't do art for the money. I do it. Clears my head, to be honest. It's nice to it's like paying it forward. Like, it's nice to get paid for it, but at the same time, it's nice to have someone enjoy something you created that's super personal. It's like if you put out a track and you're making music and you put your heart into it, and someone was like, oh man, I really, really like that. Like, it touches me. I'll pay you $5. It's not about the money. It's about you're helping someone else go through something with something you created. Kind of hope that helps answer that.